Hello, welcome to Picture the Scriptures. Destiny, purpose, plan, call, assignment, predestination, foreknowledge, blueprint, DNA, script. What do these 10 words have in common? These words, which I will be defining one after the other in a moment from now, are very important for us if we are going to understand our place in the grand scheme of God concerning our lives. We have been talking on the theme, a life of impact. And I did say that if your life is going to have impact in your generation and in future generations to come, you must first of all understand that you have a purpose in God. There's a reason for your existence. In previous episodes, I went ahead to prove through scriptures that God did have specific purposes for specific individuals. I also went ahead to say, showing again by scriptures, that it is not only those who are preachers or pastors that God has a purpose for their lives, but that in fact He has a purpose for the life of all of His children. You see, there's a principle in the Bible that says, in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word be established. In other words, if you can see a pattern that God used to deal with His people 2 or 3 times in the scriptures, you can safely adopt it as a principle of God, particularly if it transcends the Old and New Testaments. And so we established that God has a plan for your life. I did say in previous episodes that you must discover the plan of God for your life. It is your responsibility to discover God's purpose for your life. And in this series of teachings, we will be looking at how to discover. How can I find out what God's purpose for my life is? But before then, I think it is necessary for us to discuss these concepts, these 10 words that I just mentioned, one after the other, as much as we can on this episode. And then we'll continue in the next episode if we cannot conclude in this. Number 1, destiny. What is destiny? Is there really such a thing as destiny? I remember when I got saved some years back, and I saw that the church used to talk about destiny. In fact, I remember a particular convention of a certain church in the year 1993 that was themed breaking forth into your destiny. And I argued in my mind. I said, no, there can't be such a thing as destiny. You see, the reason I did so was because of my preconceived idea on the subject of destiny. You see, in the part of the world, this part of the world that I grew up in, my people, the Yoruba people, have a concept of destiny, which they call ayanmo, or sometimes kadara. And by that, they mean that whatever happens to someone in life is his destiny. They went ahead to say that before each person is born, he makes a choice whether to live a good life or a bad life, whether to die peacefully or to die out of disaster. And so that's what they called destiny. So when I got born again, I knew this cannot be true. It can't be true that evil can just befall anybody because he has chosen to end his life tragically. So when I came to the church and I find out that the church is talking about destiny, I vehemently protested, albeit silently, against the concept of destiny, which was an offshoot of my preconceived idea based on my cultural upbringing. Because when we were growing up, the Yoruba idea of destiny was portrayed in the movies, in the tales, the stories we were told. And so it formed my basic understanding of the concept of destiny. In as much as that is not correct, however, the idea of destiny is scriptural. we will find through scriptures that certain people were destined to become certain things before they were born. There was a Moses who was destined to be born at the time he was born and destined to take Israel from Egypt to the promised land. There was Samson who was destined to deliver Israel from the hand of the Philistines, and his birth was foretold. So I began to search the scriptures, not just for that concept of destiny, but to find that word itself in the pages of the Bible. So I went searching, and I did not find the word destiny, and I'm talking about the authorized version now, the King James Version, which in the days when I began this study, a little over 2 decades ago, was closer to us than most translations we have at hand today. And so I discovered that the word destiny in itself is not there. However, the word predestined is found right there in the pages of the Bible, right there in the New Testament, 4 different times. In Romans chapter 8, verse 29 and in verse 30. In Ephesians chapter 1, in verse 5 and verse 11, we find that word predestination. I read Romans 8, 29 and 30. For whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, whom he predestined, this he also called. Whom he called, this he also justified. And whom he justified, this he also glorified. Now, I'll be reading from Ephesians chapter 1, verse 5, and also verse 11. Having predestined us to adoption as sons by Jesus Christ to himself, according to the good pleasure of his will. That's verse 5. It says he has predestined us to adoption as sons by Jesus Christ to himself. Here we see that word predestined. Now verse 11. It says, in him also we have obtained an inheritance, being predestined according to the purpose of him who works all things according to the counsel of his will. Now you see, God predestined us according to his purpose. He predestined us according to purpose, which means he had a destiny for us beforehand, according to the purpose he has in mind for us. So how about the definitions? What is destiny? Destiny is a preordained future, something you ought to be in life. Take note, I did not say something you will be. That's the difference between biblical destiny and ayanmo or kadara, according to the Yoruba mythology. The Bible says this is what you ought to be. This is what you are destined to be. Okay, so a Samson or a Paul or a Jeremiah or a Bezalel could as well refuse to choose what God has destined him to be. Okay, now God has given man the power of choice. And at the same time, God has given man an outlay, a plan for his life that he ought to follow. But man has a choice to choose his own way or to choose God's own way. So God has a destiny for you and for me. And God's destiny for us is a good one. And in God's destiny for your life and mine is his purpose, what he wants you to do and what he wants you to be in life. I'll see you in the next episode. God bless you. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Peace Toluwade. Subscribe, like, share, and don't forget to click the notification bell. God